Does the US have right to roam laws? You can be forbidden to use or even cross private property, if it's clearly posted. According to this, you have a constitutional right to freedom to roam in Sweden. The short answer is no. We don't have it at that level. But the US does have public land where you are allowed to do some or most of what's described as freedom to roam. It sounds to me like allemansrätten is ingrained in Swedish culture so that most people are taught the rules growing up and adhere to them. For the most part, since we don't have this, it's harder to make sure people follow the rules. The main aspect I think of in terms of camping in the US is informal freedom where no laws exist against camping in certain areas owned by counties or cities, or they are not enforced. If you go to places like Oregon, you are far more likely to see tents on the side of the road. It just varies by state. I think you oversimplified allemansrätten in your post though. You can't just go wherever you want. Lol, you'll get shot. We have some sort of public right to the shoreline. It's complicated and I don't understand it well. https www.mass.gov/infodetails/public rights along the shoreline. In every coastal state, the use of tidelands is governed by a concept in property law known as the public trust doctrine, which dates back centuries to ancient Roman law. The doctrine states that all rights in tidelands and the water itself are held by the state, in trust, for the benefit of the public. In most states, this means that public ownership begins at the high water mark. When I went to Newport, Rhode Island, the tour guide told us that the mansion owners had been forced to back down after they tried to stop people from walking along the shoreline. No. The US has pretty strong personal property rights, and you can get in trouble for trespassing on private property. However, the US does have about 52 million acres of national park land, which is about half the total area of Sweden. This also doesn't include national forest land. State parks and forest are smaller public lands. There are still rules as to when and where you can camp and what you can take off this land. But there are large swaths of public land all across the country to explore. Hunting is different in Massachusetts. People hunt anywhere it's not posted. I live in the woods. Most people don't mind if you walk through their woodlots and acreage. Just stay away from houses. Everyone knows each other. There's certain people that you want to avoid. Be aware that the right to roam law have been made because it's always been this way. It's a part of the culture in these countries. Also, OP's statement is a bit simplified. Because you can't go everywhere and driving off-road. This is often misunderstood by many tourists. This culture law is based on a highly trust-based view in highly trust-based societies, countries as a whole. Landowners will assume that people will behave, and in most cases they do. In the US, you don't have this highly trusted culture. People would rather assume the worst, and in some cases they are right. Trespassing is illegal. Each state have different laws on where you can roam and camp. I've seen this question come up in the comments a few times. In the USA, how can you tell what has someone's private property and what isn't? While it's not explicitly always stated with a fence or a private property sign, I feel as if the states has a very strong, if it isn't yours, you don't need to be on it, feeling. Even growing up, there has always been this healthy respect for other people's things being theirs as someone who has lived in the States their whole life. There are a lot of seemingly unspoken rules around this. It should be okay as long as you keep chanting, "We do beg your pardon, but we are in your garden." In Michigan, purchasing a fishing license gives license to access waterways and clearly defined banks of streams. But caution and common sense needs to be used when exercising your right-of-way, as people can respond irrationally and with great hostility in ignorance of the law even if you're technically and lawfully allowed to be there. In Canada we have Crown land that you can CMP on for up to 14 days. Certain activities are prohibited, such as logging, trail building, or constructing permanent structures. Fishing, hunting, foraging are all okay depending on other federal laws like fishing and hunting seasons. Basically anything that's not Crown land is privately owned and you can be trespassed or arrested, depending on the circumstances of the location and time of day. Not really, but also kinda. So there is lots of public land where too are free to roam, camp and do all sorts of stuff. But private lands are a bit tricky and depend on state. I know it's common for the landowner to be required to tell you to leave before it's trespassing, unless you are committing a crime. A "no trespassing" sign does serve as that request to leave, not enter though. It also depends on what the land is used for. Entering an agricultural field is a worse form of trespassing than walking across someone's yard. No. But the USA has public property that is accessible and public parks that are bigger than some European countries. So if I put a fence up on my property, they can just walk trough? There are so many wrong answers in here. In the US there are no specific laws such as the right to roam, granting property owners the rights. But if private-owned land isn't clearly marked, then you can roam on it. You can be asked to leave. But shooting people on this land is illegal. It's different from state to state. But generally speaking, only the area around the house is subject to no warning shoots in the loosest jurisdictions. That said, there are millions of acres of public land. Go roam there, as that's what it's for. Should also mention it's worth it to landowners to enforce their property because it's possible they may lose control over unenforced land to public easements or other similar situations. No, the U.S. does not offer the right to roam on private property. In the U.S., property owners are liable if someone is injured on their property. As we don't have socialized medicine, someone who wasn't invited could injure themselves on private property and sue the owners. No, it's the opposite. You can go to jail for trespassing on private property, even for just a few seconds. You are only allowed to camp at specifically designated public sites. Having lived in the US and UK, the US is sorely missing right to roam and public footpaths. Large swaths of the West are Bureau of Land Management land where you can explore and camp subject to restrictions. But the East has very little opportunity for that. There are many stellar national and state parks, but you'll need to drive a car there and make an event out of going. There's nothing like the network of bridleways and footpaths in the UK where you can easily go for a morning ramble. That being said, the US is among the best backpacking destinations in the world, with the Appalachian Trail and Pacific Crest Trail. Walk about someone's grounds in America without asking, you'll go home in a box looking like a block of Swiss cheese. I may get downvoted, but I'm not gonna lie. I'd have a serious issue with some stranger just showing up in my yard and hanging out for a few days. In America, that usually means someone is homeless and planning to stay. Or they're a thief or burglar looking for something to steal and resell. Sweden sounds like a great place that can handle that. But unfortunately we have too many issues here. It doesn't help that a few years back, when I lived with my parents, me and my father had 2 motorcycles worth $10,000 each stolen from the side of our house. The bikes were covered and heavily locked, and they still got them. So maybe I'm just paranoid from past experience.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.